Am I the idiot for walking out of my engagement party and ghosting everyone for 3 days? My now ex-boyfriend proposed 4 days ago. Let's call him Tim. Tim and I have been together for 2 years. We talked about marriage, we are both 26 and kids, etc. Until last week I thought I had the perfect love life. Now, Tim has his best friend Mimi, fake name. Tim also has a friend group he is very close to. The problem throughout our relationship was that Tim would place me last whenever his friends were involved. He missed a promotion dinner for my work because Mimi's dog was throwing up. He missed Diwali celebrations with my family because his friends wanted him to help paint their new house. Plus some issues during his teenage years involving his friends resulted in his dad threatening to take away his inheritance and distribute it to relatives. For context, his dad introduced us. Until last year, before I left the workplace which I joined straight after college, his dad was my boss. I still see him as a father figure and respect him a lot. Now, I have outright told Tim that I don't like public proposals. I am very introverted, and having eyes on me during a loving moment will only cause me anxiety. Tim said he understood and promised he wouldn't do one when he proposed. Another thing I told Tim was that Mimi treats me passive-aggressively because I'm kind of an anxious person, I have mild OCD, and asked him to not involve her in our affairs. Tim said Mimi only wants the best for us. I kind of didn't press the issue after he got defensive. Thursday, after I entered my flat, I was greeted by all of Tim's friends, with Tim in a suit and a ring in hand. I kid you not, my flat was swarmed. There were people I didn't even know. Before Tim even said anything, Mimi chimed in and said, "Chill up. Dear God. This is not the time to make that face." I saw red. I was having a severe anxiety attack as I don't do well with lots of people. I calmly told them that there would be no proposal, and to get the hell out of my flat. They looked like in shock. So I just left my flat with just my purse, called my best friend on the way and told her to get them out, and just called a car service and sat in the car, crying, for 2 hours and went to my cabin I brought. I texted my parents, so they wouldn't worry, and told them to not take Tim's calls, switched off my phone, and stayed there. Luckily I had enough cash to make a grocery run, and the cabin was used last month. I only switched my phone on when I was calling a car and saw the barrage of calls and texts. I called Tim in the car, and he sounded defeated and kept on apologizing and crying. I told him it was over. Turns out my best friend told his dad, who was so mad, he told him that he would only get half his inheritance. I now feel that I reacted very badly and could have handled it with grace. I might have let my anxiety take over and overreacted, and I cost Tim his money. Ada? Edit. My ex-BF and I are both Indians. One of the reasons why Tim's dad likes me is that I am from the same culture, though I am not comfortable with this reasoning. I am a lawyer and make enough money to buy and maintain a flat and a cabin. Tim only has access to my flat. Comments. Comment 1. Am I the only one who thinks Tim did this to get rid of Op and to make her the bad guy? Tim's dad doesn't like his friends, including Mimi, so he can't date her, or he loses his inheritance. Dad seems to threaten to cut him off all the time. Maybe he couldn't say no when Dad introduced Oop to him. So instead of getting no inheritance, he dates Oop, makes her leave and gets half the inheritance? Am I overthinking this? Comment 2. She's a smart, well-educated, financially secure, strong, independent woman. Tim's father lawyer knows her father, and met her at work. He probably didn't like the company his son was keeping and scouted her out for him, hoping to subtly arrange a marriage. Certainly she checks every single box, from an Indian parent's point of view. The son doesn't sound like a guy who has a handle on life if the main reason he's upset is the inheritance. If he were a secure man, he'd be independently financially secure with a good job and wouldn't care about the inheritance. But both he and his friends really focus not on the relationship imploding but how Tim is getting less inheritance money now. What does that tell us? He's a mooch and his friends care more about him having money so he can hang with them. We already know Mimi's a gold digger if she has had a prior marriage fail, and is now only with a financially successful boyfriend she won't leave for Tim. She even went to Op's house to berate her about the inheritance. At that point I was wondering what was the term for friends who are gold diggers. The gold digger entourage. And the audacity of it was just a J0K, the classic bully's excuse. Well, Op didn't think it was a joke and neither does the internet. Mimi is a toxic bully whom Tim is clearly in love with if he ditched Op's promotion celebration because oh no, Mimi's dog is throwing up. Police, our eyes can't roll any further, we'd be in some possession horror movie. No future wife should come in last place behind all her husband's friends. Shoot, he didn't even invite any of her only 5 friends. A marriage where the guy is always with his gold digger posse sounds like a bad nightmare. Op didn't just dodge a bullet, she dodged an entire nuke. Update. Most people in both my previous posts said that it wasn't my fault. And after properly speaking to my family and friends, I realized that I was indeed not that wrong. The bit about changing the locks, I'll get to that later, but my best friend who is staying with me for a few days said that she checked and everything in my flat was in the right place, so I guess that's one problem less. People who keep sending me DMs saying it is fake because I own a cabin. I have no answer for that. Yes, I make enough money to live comfortably on my own, and also have an extra place that I like to go to alone. And to some really funny gentlemen who have sent me more DMs on how I'd never find a husband if I didn't learn to keep my mouth shut. Please eat shit. I don't have the mental space to argue with incels right now. For the main update, I went and spoke to Tim's dad first. He was very mad at his son. He kept saying that Tim had finally crossed limits with that group and asked me to forgive his son. I respectfully told him that even if I got back with his son, my dad wouldn't approve. Which was true. And I said that because I knew for Tim's dad, my dad's opinion mattered more. His dad then said that he was deeply sorry and that he would still support me if I needed help in the future. And I decided to take the things he left in my flat to him because I didn't want him over mine ever again. Tim said he was very sorry. That he hadn't thought I was being genuine about my social anxiety. He has seen me get panic attacks in crowds. And he thought that his friends' enthusiasm would be a positive thing. I asked him why none of my friends were there, and he said that because I have a very small number of friends. He thought we would have a nice dinner with them to share the news. Not gonna lie, his words hurt. Because his friends deserved to be at the proposal but mine didn't because there were only 5 of them. Tim also mentioned that Mimi didn't like one of my friends because she was a single mom, and it just made me more mad. I told him that he would be better off marrying Mimi, because it was quite clear everything in his life was about her. I told him that he was a shit partner and the reason why I wouldn't marry him and his dad is going to cut off his money is because he has let Mimi bully me throughout our relationship and it was Mimi's words that made me leave the proposal. Tim looked very hurt and started apologizing. He also said that he never cheated on me, that he loved me, and he promised to do better. I told him I'd give him a chance if he cut off every one of his friends and moved with me to another city. He started crying at that and said he possibly couldn't live that way and asked me to reconsider. I told him I knew he would never choose me over his friends. And I was feeling very petty, so I told him that Mimi would also never choose him over her successful boyfriend, nor would any of his friends choose him over their own families. He told me he was very sorry, and that he would limit contact with them, but I told him there was no way I was going to be with him. I dropped his things and I wanted to cry because he wouldn't even get up from the sofa or apologize, or say that he wouldn't speak to Mimi again. He just turned his face away. I left. Mimi later came by to my flat, and asked if we could talk, so I let her in. My friend says it was a dumb move but I was working and crying at the same time, so I wasn't thinking much. She said that Tim yelled at her for ruining his relationship, and she didn't know what she did wrong. I honestly had zero energy for her, and just told her if she was done talking to please leave. Mimi said that she just wanted to be there for Tim, and me making his dad cut him off was an awful thing to do. I then asked why she made a comment she knew would piss me off when I was being proposed to. Mimi replied that it was a joke and I shouldn't have taken her seriously. I just asked her to leave. After that, she said she hoped I would be happy in the future, so I guess that was it. All of Tim's friends' numbers are blocked, including Mimi's. I blocked Tim and I'll get the locks changed next week. Now, for the next story. My girlfriend of a year slept with someone else while we were taking it slow during the first month of dating. I have been with this girl I'll call Jess for close to a year now. Since specifics matter here, we started dating around last Thanksgiving, but it was only about a month later when we said we're in an official relationship. I really like this girl from the get-go and we've gotten very close since then, and we're actually planning on moving together soon. Here's a problem. Recently Jess and I ran into a guy at a small get-together with mutual friends. They exchanged a weird look like there was something between them, but I didn't think too much of it at the time. During the party something came up about the place Jess went to for a date. The time was clear since it was a Christmas market in my town, and again I thought something was off about the guy. Well, later that night I actually get a text from him. He got my number from one of the mutual friends, but said, "Hey, I don't know you, but I thought you should know that Jess and I hooked up right after Christmas." I confronted Jess about this and I could tell she tensed up right away. She got this sad look on her face but confessed right away. She said she had met this guy on Tinder and hooked up a couple of times but stopped any contact before we became official. She said she wasn't sure we would get into a relationship at that time, but she still felt bad that I found out this way. She said she considered telling me but was afraid it would ruin things between us. I told her I needed some time to think and proceeded to get drunk that night, and ignored her texts. The thing is, I feel very betrayed and I am really considering ending things. Sure, we weren't official when this happened, but we had already been on multiple dates at that time and I thought it was pretty clear that we were moving towards a full-fledged relationship. On my side, I had no interest in pursuing other girls at that point, because I only wanted to be with Jess. And on her end, she was definitely hinting at us evolving into a couple, and strongly hinting at exclusivity. The other part that kills me is that during this early stage, Jess specifically said she wanted to take things slow physically until we knew each other better. But during the same time, she hooks up with a guy she barely knew from Tinder? When I asked her this, she said it's different because she took it slow with me specifically, because she thought we would get into a relationship, but it was somehow different with a casual hookup. That logic makes zero sense to me. I don't really want to talk about with my friends because I think they would hate Jess if end up staying together. But I would like to hear opinions on here. Would you stay in a relationship like this if things were going well but the beginning was so shady? My GF met up and hooked up with a guy while we were dating but not official while she was taking it slow with me. Comment 1. It's understandable to feel hurt, but if she was honest and apologized, it might be worth considering if her actions align with your values for a future together. Comment 2. It's tough, but trust is key. If you can't reconcile the situation, it might be time to move on, especially if you're feeling betrayed. Update. As the title says, I decided to break up with Jess. I kept going back and forth because I was worried I was throwing away a great thing over something that happened in the past. But the problem is, I thought I really wouldn't be able to get past it. I can't help what she did was really shitty. Yes, I know that technically she did not cheat. But she knew that I wanted a real relationship and that we were potentially moving in that direction. But meanwhile, she expected me to plan and pay for interesting dates, court her and prove that I was worthy of her while she happily hooked up with rondos, who basically did nothing but show an interest in fucking. Fuck that. In a follow-up conversation, it also came up that her friends sort of guided her to act like this. That she should basically allow herself to have fun, and to keep her casual options open but with me to make me work for it. And show that I wasn't just looking for sex but was capable of being a committed partner. The whole thing just seems so manipulative and ugly, and these were also mutual friends who I consider to be nice girls and now my friends as well. Now I never want to see any of those pieces of shit ever again. Anyway, I know this is starting to sound a bit like a rant LOLL. But I felt pretty pissed off and basically called it quits. The actual breakup was actually quite unpleasant. No harsh words were exchanged, but Jess cried and we kind of talked about some happy times. I guess that's the hardest part about this. Like, I don't think she is a bad girl, and maybe we could have had a nice future together like we did over the past few months. But in the end, I do think I made the right decision. I want to be with someone who treats me well from the get-go, not someone who manipulates me while playing games just so she can have her cake and eat it too. Now, for the next story. My husband has been saying another woman's name in his sleep, and I don't know how to feel about it. My husband and I are both in our 30s, married for about 10 years, with kids. When my husband is very tired, he talks in his sleep. Not a lot, but a few words. Usually it's about whatever is on his mind. When our boys were young, it was usually about feeding them or giving them a bath. Now it happens less than it did back then, but it still happens about once a week. Usually he says something about work or fishing or his car. Last night he said another woman's name in his sleep. Actually, a few times. First he just said her name and kind of laughed in his sleep. Then he said her name, let's go to bed. And then a few minutes later something about a shower. This is a woman that lives near us. He knows her, but I don't. I work afternoons. My husband gets out of work around 4 and so does she. So they're both outside with the kids around the same time. I've never seen them be anything but friendly. I've never seen odd behavior from him. But this has me very paranoid. I don't want to be one of those people who gets mad at their partner for something that happened in their sleep. Am I being ridiculous for bringing this up to him? Update. Thank you everyone. I brought it up to my husband in a joking manner. He immediately got defensive and began saying he couldn't fucking believe I was making an issue out of this. I was pretty taken aback by his immediate defensive reaction. I assured him I wasn't accusing him of anything. I had just wanted to bring it up since it happened and make a joke out of it so he knew I wasn't actually upset. He continued to call me ridiculous, dramatic, etc. And if he expected me to stop hanging out with her because of this I was out of my goddamn mind, then he left. Comment 1. It's understandable to feel concerned, but sleep talking is often harmless and doesn't always reflect waking thoughts or feelings. Comment 2. His defensive reaction is concerning though, and it might be worth addressing how he responded, rather than focusing solely on the sleep talk itself. Update. After my husband's very defensive response after I brought it up in a really lighthearted way, I began to get a little concerned. Especially how he said, "If you expect me to stop hanging out with her over this, you're out of your goddamn mind." Of course, I never would have asked him to stop talking to her over a dream, but his response really was over the top. So yesterday I took a half day and got home from work at 4:15, the time they're usually hanging out. My kids and my husband were not at home, despite my husband telling me he had gotten them off the bus, and his Life 360 saying he was home, plus his car being in the garage. I called his phone and it went off in the bedroom, but no him. So I walked by the woman's house. She has a pool in her backyard, and from the street I could hear the two of them, clearly in the backyard in the pool, talking and laughing. I literally didn't even go onto her yard. I just yelled out my husband's name and said, "Where are the kids?" He was silent for so long. He started to say something, but I cut him off. I think I just told him to shut the up and told him just tell me where my kids were. He said they were over his mother's. I told him he had until I went to get them and get back to get his stuff out of the house. He tried to keep talking. At this point he had come out to the street, but I honestly didn't want to hear anything he had to say. I told him I wasn't messing around. If he was still there when I came home, I was going to lose it. He got the point. He was gone, but I did let him tell me his side of the story on the phone later that night. He said they were just friends, that he didn't tell me how close they were, because he thought I would get upset. A lie. I don't care if he has female friends or not as long as he's respectful of boundaries, which he wasn't. I don't believe anything he said. He lied about where our kids were to innocently hang out with a friend. Obviously this is all new, but I have no intentions of reconciling with him. I'll be a cooperant and nothing else. It feels surreal to me how all of this started. I still can't really believe it's happening.